Welcome everyone to another episode of Series 2 of the Fitzness Academy podcast. Now, before you click off, all right, no offense, all right, wait until you hear this man's story, all right? I've got Will Godwin on the podcast, right, ladies and gentlemen, and you're going to want to stick around for this bloke's story, all right? This bloke, I will be honest, we've shed many nights out. I will include a photo here, Will, as well, no matter how bad we look. Okay, I will include one right in the middle there. I think I don't know where it is, but I will include one. Okay, just as that's the first icebreaker. Okay, the second icebreaker question. Firstly, thank you very much for coming on, mate. Firstly, thank you very much for coming on.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, cool. Secondly, mate. Okay, the icebreaker question. Okay, this is funny because everyone is different. Okay, so Will get into his story in a little bit and what he's about. Okay, but Will basically, if Will does something, he will do it until literally he cannot do it anymore. Okay, he'll do anything. You ask him to do one thing, he'll do anything. Okay, so one physical activity, mate, that you have to do for the rest of your life. You cannot change. One physical activity.
Is that a joke?
No.
One.
Just one, mate. See, exactly. Getting you thinking.
Mate, I am thinking, but I've never done one activity ever. In my entire life, I've always done like minimum 3 things.
Exactly. And we'll get into a bit more contact with that, ladies and gentlemen. But you need to give me an answer, Will. I need to explain why, because you can't say, oh, you're running, and then that's it. You can't say triathlon either, because that's a multidisciplinary. Come on.
All right, fine. Tennis then.
Tennis. Okay, I'll accept. Why?
Because it's what I'm doing now.
Oh, that's brilliant, mate. I always love doing these, mate. And look, some are easier than others, all right? This was the easiest one I've had to do, mate, because literally I thought of you and I was like, all right, he does a lot, so right, cling it to one thing. All right, no, but mate, brilliant. Okay, great start so far. All right, so I think it's fair to say, I think, mate, possibly a lot of people might not have heard of you, okay? But this is what's the beauty of the Fitzness Academy podcast, all right? And I'm going to leave your documentary in the description, okay? Because it's fantastic, okay? So what we'll do is, regardless of your story so far, just tell us who you are, what you're about, all right? And what you had for breakfast this morning. No, I'm joking. So just tell us a bit more about you, mate. Go on. Floor is yours.
Yeah, so obviously I'm Will. I'm 21 now. That was bad that I almost forgot that.
I was going to say,
yeah,
you said, you almost were asking me, mate. I was like,
Great start. Am I 21? No, yeah. 21. A bit of a fitness freak, have been since I was little, always moving about, struggling to stay still for anything more than probably 30 minutes to push. At the moment I play tennis for the Uni 3rd team, which is all right considering I started tennis properly 2 years ago, so it's not too bad. You could say I'm addicted to sport. Love my gym. I probably train about 10 to 20 hours a week.
More specifics as well. Giving us metric data. You're going to tell us how much kilometers you cover.
Let them know more about you. That is sort of me, though. It's like if I'm not, and then if I've obviously my degree, which is sport performance analysis, that's good fun. At the moment, I'm looking at tennis. Probably will do for the rest of it. I do a bit of coaching here and there, but
see, this is a beauty of having yourself on the podcast, man. You may have been wondering, why does he want to have me on? Well, okay, we'll get into specific details, all right? Everyone always thinks that you have to have someone on with this massive following. I would rather not, and then have someone on who's got a brilliant story, okay? So what we'll do is, obviously, maybe wondering, James, why have you had Will on? What on earth are you doing? Clicking off. See you later. No. All right, so I'm going to title this is a really interesting title, and I'm going to have to check with you on this one, and I'll send you a message later. But you've had a couple of, I think it's fair to say, not a couple of instances, where like some things which have happened to you. Okay, We'll start with, hopefully I've got these dates right, September 18th in 2018. All right, this is bearing in mind, I met you in like September, was it October 2019? So obviously this is
Yeah,
before, this was
a
just
year
before I'd met
before.
you. So give us what happened in there, mate. And obviously everyone should have watched the documentary before. What are you doing? But tell us what happened,
Do
mate.
your
Tell us what happened.
pre-work. Yeah, so it was a pretty normal evening, I think. It's the easiest way to describe it. It's just I was doing the normal things. I played a six-side football match. I then trained in the pool for an hour. And then I was cycling. I started cycling home because that's how I get there. Because obviously my parents don't drive me. Well, I'm quite independent, so I sort of get myself everywhere anyway. But I don't drive. So yeah, so I was cycling back home. It was about 9:20 at night. You got all your lights on and everything. And then I'm hit up the back at 60 miles an hour by a rogue BMW.
Jesus.
Yeah, and then I flown. So he's hit me up the back. I've then flown backwards into his windshield, smashed that, and then flown 50 to 75 feet forwards while still traveling at probably about 50 miles an hour, and then skid along the ground a bit. And then I was, obviously, like, apparently I can't remember. Obviously, a lot of it's blank and it's
Yeah.
been people have told me bits and pieces, but then the ambulance arrived. I think it was, oh no, because the driver stopped because he didn't continue. He stopped, but one of the comments was, "Oh my god, he's going to hit him," and that was from someone on the other side of the road. So he didn't veer. I didn't
Yeah.
move.
Well, you couldn't have seen him, would you? Could you? If he's
No, he's
behind,
behind
yeah.
me. Yeah. Luckily, the first person there was a nurse on her way back from her shift. So it was super lucky because I was bleeding out onto the road. So from my head, so she stabilized my head, and then I think my parents got there within the hour. The ambulance got there within like 30 minutes. The road was closed off for a good, no idea, like 3, 5, 7 hours, something like that.
That's crazy, and it's fantastic. And I think we can appreciate everyone how difficult it is to probably tell that when obviously you're the one that's being fed the information. It's almost as if you're watching it on the news, isn't it? Because you're obviously like, well, I don't know what's happened, so you're almost being fed this information from people who are outside.
It
So,
is.
what? Obviously, we'll stick with that one first, and then my first point is what having this and obviously this podcast is not always about fitness, but it's quite cool that it links in. Was it ever a case of right, when can I get back to training, or was it always, are you very much in the moment and sort of right, this is what has happened, take it one step at a time, I'm lucky to be this and this?
Oh, it was 100%. When can I get back on the bike? I don't think any part of me was like, oh no, I never want to do that again. I'm scared of the road.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure inside 3 months of the accident, I cycled back along that road doing a time trial ride. So it really didn't phase me.
Yeah.
Um,
What was your
I don't
mum's words? What was I obviously your mum features pretty
Oh,
heavily in the documentary. What did she ever tell you what was going through her head when you said, when can I get back on the bike again? Because I know my mum would probably slap me in the head.
I mean, there's not a lot my mum can control because when I think about it, she knows I struggled, and like she said, I'm pretty sure she says in the documentary, it's like keeping him on a bed or just inside, like in the hospital,
Yeah.
was like caging an animal. I really struggle with it.
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, I was only in there for 10 days, regardless of all the broken bones and injuries I suffered. So that was, but it was like I was always keen to get up. They got me standing within 24 hours of the incident. The physios got me up and standing. And bearing in mind, this was with a fractured skull, medium to severe brain damage, 6 broken ribs.
You said something about the first rib, wasn't it? Something about how the first rib, if
Yeah, and
you
a punctured
links very
lung.
close into your lungs, wasn't it?
So the first rib, you're on your right side, is right at the top, and it's attached to a bunch of nerves. If you break it, because of the amount of nerves that surround it, you've got an 80% chance that you'll lose the function in your
Jeez.
arm. And I didn't, so I was bloody lucky there. I was also lucky that I didn't damage my pelvis or my because obviously there was a bleed to my brain, but the brain damage was healing itself, so it wasn't
Yeah.
too bad. They then found a cyst in my head, an arachnoid cyst. They found there. Obviously, a lot of these things, that a lot of people have cysts, but you won't find them unless you get it scanned.
Yeah.
Mine was just ideal or docile or whatever you call it, where it doesn't affect it. It's just sat there. It's not growing. It did get bigger like after the first scan, and that was only because my brain and the skull itself was healing. So it was, there were a lot. I can't remember. Apart from the abrasions to my back, the stitching itself was 5 in my head, 13 in my back, 4 literally just above my groin.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how I didn't damage my legs, but apart from minor tissue damage to my right ankle. But
Do you reckon it almost? I don't know. Obviously, if you've spoken to a doctor about this, do you reckon it was? Do you reckon obviously you coped as well as you did in obviously the respect that what could have happened based on how sort of possibly how strong you were? Obviously, I'm not a doctor, so obviously,
no, it definitely played a part.
Yeah.
Time obviously I was 17. I I was very fit. Like at the time I did triathlon, my cardiovascular fitness was pretty damn good. So my VO2 max, I think when I was 17 was like, we did a test in my first year we did went and did a VO2 max test. So this was a year before the accident happened. But even then, so this was when I wasn't quite as fit, but we did it then and it was 58. So in a year after, it was probably definitely mid 60s, low 70s.
Obviously I'm more sort of leaning towards the S&C side, but I do a bit of physiology, and that's very, very good for it, and that's very good considering probably 26-year-old possibly peak of physical condition if you're an elite athlete. And that was you're 17 at the time, wasn't
I
it?
was 17, yeah.
That is ridiculous.
It was pretty good considering I wasn't elite at the time. I'm not now, but it was, I was doing regional events and stuff, so I wasn't bad.
Yeah. So thinking about obviously everything's happened, you said, obviously I wasn't fussed about sort of going back on that same road. Were you obviously probably in the immediate thought, you're like, right, this isn't going to affect me. I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing. I want to get out there again. Subconsciously, were you thinking, right, cool, I need to be careful in case this happens again? Or
I can't say I was. I'm very much it's like with me there's a fine line between brave and stupid, and I flirt with it a lot. So like this is more like physical activity, and then occasionally it's like if your academic side is a bit different, but definitely physically I will. It's like you said earlier, if you give me something to do and it's exercise and stuff, I will. If it's a challenge, my competitive nature will go and do it until I literally fall out, pass out, die, whatever. I will keep going to the end.
that's fantastic. I think there's a fine line, again, another fine line. There's a lot of fine lines here between I was about to make a party joke because it was not for this podcast. Not this podcast. I think there's another fine line again between people who actually say that they actually do it and people who actually do it, and and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But for you, is it always a case of does it have to? And this is an interesting question. I think it's going to be one that you're going to think of a bit. And again, I'm almost going off the spot here. I like to be creative with these podcasts. Like, have a cool few bits and then we crack on and have a nice chat. Is there always a case that you have to enjoy what you're doing in order to go to those lengths? Or is it someone like, oh no, you can't do this, but you don't even know what it is, and then you just need to crack on and do it?
I think if it's a physical challenge, I'm more than likely going to enjoy it
Yeah,
because that's just how I am. I love doing physical challenges. Some of the stuff, like if it's too easy, I'll get bored and switch off.
yeah,
In other instances, if it is too easy, I will make it harder
yeah.
for myself and then try and push the limits that way.
Have you got that
I
addictive personality? Like obviously you said with tennis, you started obviously only a couple of years ago. Did you get addicted that way, and did you possibly worry that it was going to be a phase and it was going to fade out? Or for example, you start, I don't know, lacrosse tomorrow, and lacrosse you might want to try it, and then that one fades out. Was tennis one where you kind of knew straight away, or was it again a phase, and then that with your addictive personality in that respect?
don't know. I think I was always like when I went to uni, I went to do triathlon. Rowing was one that I wanted to start as well, but I went for the triathlon. So because I heard they had the performance center there, I thought, okay, well I can go pro here. This would be great. But the NTPC, unfortunately, you already have to have made a certain grade by that point. So even though I was physically very fit and I could do, I like for an average person, I look like, oh, flipping out, he's good at that. Compared to the guys that were in the NTPC, they'd already done pro circuits, they'd already done this and that, and there is a huge gap between amateur and elite level.
Yeah,
Which is why they're professionals, why they're paid to do it and stuff. But it's like the GB lot that train there. I know one of them. I think you might know her as well, Abby Williams.
yeah.
Yeah. So when she was doing it, and she was just bashing out runs after a night out, and she was still clocking sub 6 minute mile, even though she was hanging out her ass. Um, I, on the other hand, at that point, I mean, I was never a great runner, but I was still sitting at about 7 minute, 7 minute mile, 6.5 minute mile rather, struggling to go sub 20 minute 5K at that age. And it was just sort of like, where do I draw the line and go,
Yeah.
okay, an addictive personality, yeah, but got to be realistic. So I'll go, but I'll to my limits, but I'll also realize what I can and can't do. So I won't, overexert myself in a certain sport or discipline.
Yeah.
If I've seen, right, that's how far I can take it. There's certain instances where you can challenge that and take it further. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, tennis was something I've always had an interest in. It's just never had facilities or availability to do it.
For for me, what actually catches sort of my interest in that respect is you saying obviously trying a lot of things first. And I think that's I don't know if obviously over here too much. Obviously, I grew up in Gibraltar, so it's a bit different. But I know in Gibraltar, it's obviously a mindset where they almost try and target someone a bit too much, sort of like we talk about talent identification. I don't know if you speak about it, but so obviously if someone naturally has that sort of natural instinct to do something, they'll be sort of given all the resources to do it. I think that probably hinders some people, and you hear about a lot in cricket because obviously people get fatigue or burnout or whatever you want to call it. So I think almost having that ability to try as many things as possible, and obviously to a certain extent, I think you're a bit more of a different breeder, kettle of fish, if you like, because obviously you'll take it and see how far you can take it. But I think, do you reckon, and we'll get on to sort of a bit of advice later on, but do you reckon sort of you almost encourage anyone to try anything or everything?
I'd say to a certain extent, yeah. Like if you like, there's always this thing. I don't know if you've had the saying in Gibraltar as well, but like definitely back here, my parents always say, "Oh, you try something 10 times before you can say you don't like it and stuff like that." It's like unless you've given it like your full effort, you cannot say you've tried it. So like with me, uh, like cycling, when I was little, sure, it would be I'd dip my toe in it and I'd sort of, oh, that's cool. All right, cool. But when I properly gave it a go, I realized I was addicted to speed and the adrenaline I got from using my own body to push past 50 miles an hour, even if it was downhill or even then just knocking out 30 miles an hour on a flat on the bike is awesome. And it hurts, but it's wicked.
Yeah. Is it much about the feeling after the event almost, which catches you as well? Sort of the feeling of possibly achieving a new personal best or things like that. Because obviously, at the end of the day, I think it's very rare to get someone who probably doesn't have any goals when they're like sort of training for anything. Do you almost chase that sort of maybe new personal best, or is that what sort of drives you as well?
Yeah, I think it's also like the never ending. Like I'm always, especially at the moment, I'm constantly chasing that better version of myself, or like so the um the top form. Where is my peak performance? How much can I actually get out of my body in the state it's in? So yeah, it's training the maximum or getting the maximum out of my training without, I don't know, without trying to exceed myself, I suppose.
Yeah. Wait, you talk about exceeding yourself, and that's very rare for you. Okay, so we'll crack on to the next bit, because if not, we'll be here all day. I can be here all day. That's why I was so buzzing to get you on. So obviously everyone's like, oh yeah, he's got an interesting story. Yeah, cool. He's recovered, superb. Obviously, this fortunate met you in obviously in September. Was it 2019? Was just when we started uni, just as we started uni. And we obviously met through mutual mates. Rich, I don't know if he says he's watched one or two, so I hope he is watching. He better be, if not.
He's probably already gone like 5 minutes in. It's I'll switch off now.
He's like, oh no, he's got enough of them already. Oh no. So talk to us again. What happened on October 17th, mate? Because 2019, obviously talking about almost just over a year after this event, and we talk about taking things to the max. Go on then, the floor is yours again.
Yeah, taking things to the max. Love it. Yeah, this one was again completely unexpected. Obviously, well, not like any of them were planned.
I was going to say, is anyone who says any of these incidents planned, then you're like, all right.
No, so I joined the rowing team when I came to uni, loving it. With my endurance background in triathlon, I thought I'll give it a go, and I've always been top heavy, so I've always been bigger up top than I had down in my legs, like muscle wise, and sort of that was, especially in swimming, that was where my power came from, was all upper body, didn't really use my legs. But then, so to convert that into rowing, I felt like my sport. I thought, right, here we go, I've got it, we're taking this all the way. They said to me, right, we got Welsh Nationals, so we did a 500-meter time trial, went 1:30 for 500-meter split. That was great fun, and
that's impressive. That's impressive. I don't know if anyone knows that. I think I spoke about it very, very early on. I used to row for 5 years when I was 12 years old back in Gibraltar. Gibraltar had this almost like talent thing where you almost, if you're tall enough, you're there. And so yeah, I know what you mean. Obviously, 1:30 is pretty good. Because again, considering again that you've taken up just at university, no? I'm guessing.
Yeah, that was my first time doing a 500-meter split and going like flat out.
Yeah,
I think I'd done it once before, maybe when I was like 15, but I didn't really know what I was doing, and that was just like, yeah. I've known the technique. I'm quite good at, like, if I see something, I can pick it up. So like watching the pros do it, I'll pick up how you do it.
You're a very visual learner then.
Yeah, probably. Like if I see something, I'll mirror it.
I'm similar as well. I almost have to. And again, if I really need to, have to write something 10 times before I remember it, or I'll watch a video once and it'll memorize it that way. I think it's just naturally who you are, I suppose.
Yeah. So yeah, joined the road. That was, month in. We had a social the night before this event. That was good fun. It was really good. Met the team, socialized, whatever. But yeah, the following evening, I was like, right, it's going to be an easy training session because he knows we've just been out. Obviously, like me being me, I'd have eaten anyway. That's just, I can't go without food anyway. I struggled. I just shoveled down a pork steaks and mashed potato literally like 2 minutes before I got on the call with you. So, yeah. So we started doing it, but then when we turned up, our coach said to us, "Oh, because he was Irish at the time. He said, "Oh, we got Welsh nationals in like less than a month, so we need to crack
That's
on
one
and
coach.
do some splits." And I was thinking, okay, why not? Like it, let's go for it. Like I just why wouldn't you? So yeah, we had
I think a lot of
2
people say,
times.
why wouldn't you? I think a lot of people would have said, why wouldn't you? But again, this is yourself who we're speaking about here. So
I just, yeah, why wouldn't you? As most people would probably go, no.
you know
But
what? I'm
yeah,
all
I
right.
did.
Thanks. Cheers.
Yeah, I'll go home, have bed. But yeah, no, so we started it. First split was pretty good. That was 2:05 or 2:13, I think, something like that for 750. And then we had a minute rest, and then we went again. And then the second one was 2:35, I think, because I slowed down a lot. I went hell for leather on the first one, but then I continued to go hell for leather on the second. And even though I was obviously a bit more fatigued, it just felt really hard. And I finished, I went to the end. I was not going to give up. And then when we stopped, my mate finished, tapped me on the back. He's walked the other way. I was catching my breath, bent over the row machine. He's got up and walked around, which is probably what I should have done, but I didn't. I just catch my breath. And then next thing I know, my eyes open, I'm laying on the floor and there's paramedics around me. And they've just gone, "Oh, Will, you okay? You okay? Okay?" Something like that. And I've just gone, "What the fuck is going on?"
Yeah.
And it turned out that I'd literally collapsed off the seat and had a cardiac arrest. And I'd then been, they then given me CPR and defibbed me. So gave me an electric shock and brought me back to life because my heart rate went vroom, and then they buzzed me back. So died, came back, and then I think I was out total time. Everyone keeps asking me, "How long are you dead for?" And I was like, honestly, I don't know, but I think it was about 5
actually, as
minutes.
soon as I had the cardiac arrest, I started my stopwatch.
Yeah. Oh yeah. While I was in deep space, I just went like,
Come on, Will. Come on, carry on, carry on. Yes,
yeah.
yes. Will.
New world record. No, like I just aiming for another record. They apparently the first time I came around, I was like, "Whoa, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on?" My eyes were wide open.
Yeah.
And then I fell back, and then when I eventually came to, which is the bit I remember, there were paramedics around me, and everything. They brought in, they rang the Heath Hospital, and they brought in. They were preparing to. Had to get all the rugby players off the pitch for training because they were bringing the helicopter. The ambulance had arrived. There were plenty of people around me. My fellow rowers were just like, "Oh my god, what's going on?"
How big of a fine was that in the next week?
Sorry?
How big of a fine was that in the fine pot next week?
I think they let me off because they were still in hospital.
Ugh.
Like if that had been a fine, I think I would have thrown a drink at them. Like,
I reckon they'll probably still be going. I reckon it'll be a monthly subscription. Wait, giving them no pun intended. You almost gave them a heart attack. No pun intended whatsoever. No,
well, tit for tat, isn't it? Tit for
yeah.
tat. It's only fair. Yeah, it was just nuts. I came to in the end, and I was strong enough to, they put me. They were just like, "Can you do this for me?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then like within like 5 minutes, I had caught my breath properly. Are we still there? Your Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh
I'm
no,
here.
we're good. Yeah, so within 5, yeah, nice, we're good. Within 5 minutes, sort of, I was all right. And I was sort of like, I'm a really, really chilled out patient. So there's nothing like, I'll trust doctors with anything. They can do whatever they want. And I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. Do what you want. Cool. Because I know they're professionals and it's like they get on with it. Lots of people would be like, no, don't do that. I don't like that. I don't like needles. I'm just like, whatever, sure. Here's my arm. Take blood, whatever you need. I just don't care. Which is a bit of a pain though, because when my mum rings and she was rung by the DM that was on shift in Nyack, and she said, "So I think your boy's just had cardiac arrest. he's okay now. He's awake. He's all right. And Mum was like, okay. And then she made her way up to. She got onto the train and made her way up to Cardiff. And when I was finally brought into A&E, like I was talking the entire time in the ambulance because why not? You have a chat with the nice lady who was sat next to you going, are you okay? Can we do this, this, and this? I was like, yeah, sure. Whatever you need. How are you? How's your day going? You know, I was just like, well, no.
Did she ask you, or was it you asking her?
No, I asked her. I
Oh,
said,
I was
how's your
gonna
day
say, I thought it
going?
was the other way around. I was about to say, oh my word.
I think
Yeah,
if she said that to me, I probably would have just been like, yeah, well, I think I've had better. I don't know. I didn't actually know what
I've had
had gone
better
on
days.
until I got to the hospital in A&E.
We should have asked her what your split was on the last
No
one in
one
case you had
told me
forgotten
what
it.
had actually happened.
He said, oh, was my split all right though? That is what will make my day. And then obviously she'll tell you. Have I lost you? You still there?
Yeah, like the thing is, no one told me. No one
Yeah.
told. Yeah, sorry. No one told me. Literally, no one told me what had happened to me until I got to A&E. So I then, when we were in A&E, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Can I go now? I just wanted to leave because I was like, oh, I'm fine. Clearly,
Yeah.
I'm fine. But I was strapped up to a defib for, in my opinion, no reason at all. Obviously, that wasn't the medical.
That's your thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm like, well, I'm fine. I can go home and I can carry on with my day or evening or whatever. And then my mum rang my phone. So I then was given my phone back. My mum rang my phone and she said, and she said, oh, I rang her and they said, can you ring her and just check the details and whatever? And I was like, hi. And she went, you okay? And I was like, yeah, fine. Why? I was just like, yeah, whatever. Cool, I'm fine. How are you? And then the doctor, who's literally standing next to the bed, looking at me like, "What is wrong with you?" just going, "Why are you this calm?" And then she literally looked at me and just went, and I was like, "Okay, right." She was like, "Give me the phone," and I was like, "Hey, here you go, fine, whatever." Don't get so antsy about it, you know. I was so chilled, and then she just like told my mum exactly what had happened, and then I said, "Can I go home now?" to her, and she just went, "I don't think you quite realize how serious what has happened to you is," and I was still a bit like, "I feel fine." And she went, "Do you
Yeah.
not feel anything?" And at this point, my heart rate had returned to its normal,
Yeah.
like sub 50 resting heart rate. So I was just like, I'm fine. I'm in bed. Like, what's wrong?
Did you automatically get drawn towards again, right? When can I sort of almost train again? So again, linking it back into the first event which happened, do you almost automatically go back to that and go like, fine, let me just carry on?
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. I tried while I was in A. I was like, "Well, can I go home now? When do you think I'll be able to go back?" And it was it was a bit of a pivotal moment in the hospital when my mum got there and then was like, I got really irritable and I was like, because they weren't telling me enough. And I was like, all you got to do is communicate because otherwise I will research stuff and what's happened because that's what I do. I look it up, I'll find out. But I was getting really antsy at the fact that I was panicking that I wasn't going to be able to play sport again. And mum was like, well, if you can't, we'll just deal with it. But for as long as I can remember, sport has been my life. So it's like, well, I've known nothing else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just did not know what to do.
And this is an interesting quote. I'm not going to get onto the advice bit yet because I'm still intrigued. Was it always? Did you almost? I don't know, and this is obviously something that you probably spoke about. Were the two almost linked in together, or was it just completely different? Again, a completely different scenario. Because if I was listening, I would be like, right, cool, right. And surely these are interlinked some way. Were they or?
No, they were completely unrelated. I even did the checks. I even looked at the stuff myself when with them, and the nurses and doctors, and they said no, it's completely unrelated. They said the only way it'd be connected is if when you're on the bike, you possibly had a fit or a seizure, which is what led to you not paying attention and then being hit. but I was conscious the entire time on the bike until I was hit. So, and even then it was like seconds, and then I was still like, whoa, that hurt.
Yeah.
But I couldn't say I really remember any pain. Probably brains locked it from my memory, but no, not linked.
That's mental. And again, if I was watching, I would be like, how sure. But what I'm curious is to understand sort of, and this is obviously going to be the most interesting part, where we look at sort of what. First of all, let's start off. Were you ever sort of, you must have thought, right, in that sense, you were probably not, I'm not going to say unlucky because I absolutely hate that word. It's almost like, did you understand that possibly you might have had an issue with taking things too far? Do you reckon? And this is not an insult. This is just me, obviously.
No.
Sort of being, thinking about what's happened, and then you understanding, right, cool, these couple of things have happened. Do you reckon you need to tone it down a bit? Was that your thinking?
No. So again, my initial reaction was, right, can I train again? Can I get going? The thing that they said was they literally had to say to sit me down. The consultant was in the room, my specialist nurse was in the room, and a couple of the other cardiology just literally sat me down as a group of them and went, right, it is 6 weeks with no sport.
I know exactly what I would say to that. I 100% know, and I'll tell you a story. But carry on. I'll tell you a story, Karen.
They said, well, actually, what they said was 6 weeks with no upper body movement, which to me meant, right, I can go on the bike. And then they said to me, but it has to be stationary bike, has to be inside. The maximum you can do outside is walk. I was like, right. Fine. I'd say that is the most difficult that I was when I was in hospital. But because I was in there for 3 weeks, I was visited by rowing team, the head of my course. The dean even wanted to come and see me, but she couldn't. I had the chaplain.
Her loss. Now you're on the Fitzness Academy podcast, mate. Her loss. I'm not sure who she is, but again, and I'm at the same university, so it's her loss, mate. She's gonna have to watch the podcast as well.
Oh, you know what? That's what she's missing. She's just not listening to the podcast. How are we gonna get Cardiff Met's name out there? You know.
That's what I was gonna say. It might as well be just giving us free tuition, to be brutally honest with you, mate. At the end of the day, promotions I've had on this, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I had Dan Douthwaite on as well. Obviously, who's been to Cardiff Met as well, mate. They're gonna have to start giving me some sort of, I don't know, reimbursement or I don't know, some sponsorship.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Paying back loan for you.
Yeah, true. But anyway, so I understand again a little bit. I unfortunately again broke a couple of fingers, and then this absolute and this is not trying me to be really offensive towards the people who treated me, right? But I don't think they understood quite what the severity is. If you're a sportsman, you're an athlete, you're someone who engages in a lot of activity, I think it's a lot easier to say, possibly, right, you're going to be out for a little bit, rather than they told me something like 4 months or something like that. And then I was like, well, that's not going to happen. And then my mum beside me, and my older brother's the same. My older brother has a kidney condition, then he hurt his back or something, and then he went into doctors, and the doc said no sport. And then I was like, no, I'm going to like row, like you can't stop me in front of doctors. My brother's brutally honest with you. I'm not as brutally honest as that. I wouldn't obviously be. My brother just doesn't care, and he will do it. And I was like, all right. So I learned from him. I did a little bit of the same thing. So then, and they did, oh yeah, it's 4 months out, and I was like, well, it's not really gonna happen. My mum next to me being like, James, shh, listen to this. I was like, Mum, no. I was like, telling me 4 months. I was like, well, no, I'm not. And then like 2 months later, I had my first like sort of hit with a bat again, and then my mum was like, be careful with your finger, because she knows, I think. And then, so is your mum that way as well? Does she almost accept it now as, oh yeah, he's gonna do it anyway, so I might as well just be supportive of it?
Oh, my mum fully understands. I think even with the car crash, it was like she just. Obviously, it was not a nice experience for her to go through either of the times. Being called from my phone and someone random answer it and pick up, and then having to deal with me, who's like, right, can I get going again? I want to be able to row again.
Yeah.
And it was a sort of a crossroads where they went, it's now a case of assessing your quality of life. What do
Yeah.
you need, like physically need, can't go without, that's going to have the longevity of the device you've just been put in. But then, yeah, so she fully understood that
Your
I
mum's a
was,
nurse, right? Your mum's a nurse.
yeah,
So
mum's a diabetes specialist nurse. She worked on the ward when she was younger, but then she specialized and went into diabetes for pediatrics. So diabetes for kids. But
yeah.
yeah, it was, she understood. She doesn't bother trying to talk me out of it. The only thing she will do is just tell me the facts, and then she'll leave it for me to deal with on my own,
Yeah.
because she knows I will, or I'll find ways around
You
it.
will find the will. You will find
I
the will.
will. I will find a will.
My next question is: has your mum actually changed your contact information in your phone? Because obviously she's not expecting who she's going to hear from, whether it's you or it's going to be someone else. Has she done that?
No, she left it as, well. She knows. Sure, she knows if it
Yeah.
is someone else, it'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake, what's he done now?
Yeah, and we joke about this, ladies and gents. Obviously, we joke about this, obviously, and it's the natural way we are, and me and Will are very similar in that respect. Almost a lot joke it off or just try and think about something else to try and this is obviously we are being very serious or trying to be very serious about this. But my the probably incidents happen in life, and I think we can all agree probably each and every individual person's obviously the severity is different, has impacted or had something happen to them along their lines. My question is to you, and you said that you are most proud of the fact that you kept going. Was that thinking, right, I'm saying this in a sense that, right, this thing has happened, another incident has happened, and you carried on? Or was it you yourself not thinking about it and being like, well, I would have carried on anyway if one incident happened, or I would have carried on if a third incident would have happened?
I think I think my natural instinct is to, I don't think of like it's one of the reasons, like, so I'm sorry for any football supporters out there, but I don't, it's one of the reasons I can't sit and watch football, because of the guys that are paid millions of money and they just run around and they fall over, or they try and cheat life, as it were. And like, for me, it's like, I will never, it's not in me to just go, oh no, do you know what, I give up, it's too hard, can't do it. It's all about, right, where can I go from here? This has happened, great, we deal with it, we move on, next thing, bigger challenge, you've got conditions now, you can't do this and this, fine, but I can still do this and this, so there is a route and I can still continue what I'm doing, just in a slightly different way. It's just adapting to everything that comes your way, really.
Yeah, and my next question, obviously, I think we've all, me, yourself, obviously, and then everyone watching us kind of gathered it slightly. But does your adversity almost come from the events because they've happened, or were you that type of person like before any of these events or were to happen, or if they didn't happen, will you still be that kind of person where you're like, no, I'm proud of just I cracked on.
I think, like, I was always the kind of person to sort of just get up and get on with it,
Yeah,
but definitely the events themselves changed my outlook on life. So it's another thing of, like, death alters your perspective,
yeah,
and it definitely rearranges your priorities. So with the first one, I suddenly went, right, shit, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? I want to go to uni. I want to study a degree. I want to follow a career. Okay, this has happened. The after effects of that one was slightly more severe than the first one. So I obviously, we haven't mentioned it yet, but I was fitted with a device which prohibits some of my activities that I can now do. So it was, then I physically had to change the way that I did things. Whereas before it was more like, you're going to be that kind of person, but nothing's changed. It's just, we've had a bump, recover, rehab, 6 months of that. I was back to full fitness, full and competing again. And then the next one, it was more of a psychological battle. So those two events have made me grow up
Yeah.
a lot quicker than perhaps, well, I know it's made me grow up a lot quicker than anyone else my age, but it's it's life experience,
Yeah.
and it's something that I wouldn't necessarily change,
Yeah.
but it's also years you can't get back.
Of
So
course. And you mentioned the frustration element when you were in the moment and you said, oh, you're in the hospital bed and you're saying, right, can I go? Did it almost take you that almost time when you were doing your rehab to almost realize not how lucky you were? Because again, like I mentioned in the opening parts, I honestly do brutally think that you probably came through it a lot better than most because you're physically fit enough to cope with those events. Did it almost take that time to rehab to almost realize, so right, I need to stop getting so frustrated and think, how lucky I've been almost?
it's it. That's a tricky one because I there was a lot of frustration when they said, because they came to me in the hospital and they said, right, you are not leaving the hospital without having a device fitted. And it was at that point I was just like, well, this is not gone the way I thought it would. Um, Even after like being put on the treadmill and doing an exercise test, which was probably the best day of the 3 weeks I was in,
Being
being
told that you can do
allowed to get my heart rate up. I know, but it was like the day I was allowed to get my heart rate up to 195, and I was just like, come on. And then the rest of my week was just a bit traumatic, really. It was just like, well, you've now got to have a device fitted. You're not going to be able to do this, this, and this. And then the next week and a half that I was still in there was more like, okay, it was all figuring out what can I still do, but none of me really believed that anything was going to happen until until the day that I had the surgery and they put my ICD in. So
I
yeah.
I love that way that you just said that, because where obviously my injury was absolutely nowhere near compared to the severity of yours, but I don't know, and I couldn't tell you why. Whether obviously it wasn't as severe. Obviously, I did have surgery for it. Again, nowhere near the severity of yours. But I almost adopted a mentality of right. And I can't remember exactly who said this, but it's more like I almost thought, right, what can I do rather than what? Oh, I'm so upset at what can't I do? Do you know what I mean? And for me, it was so I couldn't tell any of you guys, and it's not because I don't want to. I just couldn't tell you like why I thought that. It was almost like an automatic thing. I don't know if were you the same?
Yeah, I think fairly similar. It's it's a bit of it's definitely, I would call it a reality check. It's where you just have that eureka moment and you go, you just suddenly realize that this is happening. You can't do what you thought you're going to be able to do. You are going to have to spend time not doing what you want to do. And it's one of those things, though. It's also another thing, like a maturity thing. It's like I had to deal with is the fact that I can only go as fast as my body will let me.
Yeah.
So, and it's probably a similar thing for you, even with your surgeries and stuff. You can't do anything till your body is ready. And even though they give you, say, like you said, they say, oh, right, 4 months like cricket. Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. But in your head, you still know that there is still going to be a time where you can't do anything. And so you still have to give it something.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like you're compromising in your head with what your body can actually do. Oh, it feels all right today, so we'll give it a go. But then if you give it a go and it hurts, you're just like, okay, right, I can't do it yet.
Yeah.
And although it's frustrating, you're like, I know where my limits are.
Yeah, and I've never really actually spoken about this with anyone, because obviously, again, this is not me saying that I'm anywhere near the severity of yourself, but again, I almost felt, because I'm so incredibly sort of active and I'm always trying to do something, whether it's with Fitzness Academy now. Thankfully, I had it there, so I was always thinking of things that I can do. Or I'm outside exercising, wherever I'm playing cricket, I'm running, I'm cycling. I'm in the gym. I love my gym as well, obviously, like yourself. I almost felt, and this is incredibly going to sound really bizarre to some people, and my mum's actually probably going to say, "Oh, what are you talking about?" So I'm like, I almost felt that I was wasting everyone's time, or like sort of almost a failure because I couldn't do anything, and I almost felt that I was just wasting away. It sounds incredibly bizarre, but like I in myself, I'm like, God, I'm not going to bother speaking to anyone. I'm just wasting their time. I'm going to tell them how shit I feel.
Yeah.
And this is no respect to anyone who's obviously messaged me during that time. I obviously appreciate it to no end. I'm just like, oh yeah, how you doing? I'm like, yeah, thanks. I'm like, what else do you want me to tell you? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you were the same with that respect. Obviously, I was very, very appreciative of the fact, and I never ever said that anything close to that, but it's difficult. And I'm glad I've obviously said it now, because obviously, hopefully, I don't know if you're the same, but hopefully
Yeah,
everyone.
no, so I'm I was very much similar, but it was with me, it was just like, people are going to ask questions. People are going to want to check if you're okay. For me, that's completely fine. I don't mind it. There did become a point where I was fed up a bit, and I was a bit like, okay, when's this going to end? But it was a string of, like, I kept seeing more and more people. I kept having to explain what's happened to me, and even if I say this has happened to me, I then have to tell the whole story, because it doesn't make sense to anyone if I don't.
Yeah.
Or it's just a case of, but I'll never ever say to anyone, I have my own reasons, because I don't like shutting people down like that.
No, of course.
So,
I'm the same.
yeah,
Yeah. I think
like
just
you say, you want respect. You want to
exactly. Yeah.
respect them, because you're so grateful that they've asked you if you're okay. But at the same time, you're like, okay, let's keep this short and sweet, but allow them to know something, because it's obviously, like, with your friends, you're like, well,
Yeah.
I want to tell you everything, but how much you actually going to pay attention and remember is different. Like, my best mate forgets occasionally that I have this in. So, like, he'll be like, oh, should we go do this? And I'm like, what do you think? And he'll go, oh, no, you can't.
Yeah.
So it's tip tap. My dad, like, when I first time I went home, this was still very new. It was at Christmas. He was doing the pudding like he usually does. He went down to the freezer, got magnums out, and he was chucking them to my family as we usually do. I wasn't paying attention. Normally that would have been fine, but he threw it towards me, and if I hadn't have had the reflex, it would have hit my device, and I lost it at him, because I've been sort of just like, I've been so respectful for everyone. It was just at that point where it's just like, what the are you doing? And I've never ever spoken to my dad like that before, but it was just sort of that kind of moment where you snap, something's changed, and people don't, it's difficult.
And I understand you 110%. And ladies and gents, this is not trying to say that anyone is any one of us ungrateful at all. Obviously, I think if anyone had a go at, it would probably be best to have a go at me, because mine obviously isn't anywhere near, again, as severe. Obviously, everyone with what you've gone through, mate, I think everyone can honestly understand why you would get frustrated in these things. Not even for the first time, but the second time as well.
I will just stop you there, though. Like, something I say to other people a lot, and something I'm going to say to you now: don't compare yourself to me, because what happened to me is one of those things where it shouldn't have happened. It will never happen to a lot of people. Most people, it's a 1 in a million %, like a 1 in a million chance.
Yeah.
But people comparing themselves to me is like, it's like comparing, I don't know. It's like comparing how strong you are compared to Eddie Hall. Like, it's a joke. Like, it's not. It doesn't make any sense. There's no point, because it's not on the same scale. Like, if you say, "Oh, my injury's nowhere near as bad as yours," yeah, but a lot of people's aren't, and I'm like, well, you can't compare it, because it's like, I shouldn't have gone through that anyway. Like, yours could have been like a cricket injury. You do this, and this. Like, I got twatted by a car. Like, it's not normal.
That's why every single time I've said it, I've been like, obviously, this is nowhere near, not even close to. That's why I literally shut myself down and say that, because I don't want anyone thinking that for a second, and to think like that. I think that it's incredible to speak to someone as well who's had the same thoughts. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
And that respect, because I think no one will ever get upset at you for getting frustrated at anything. I think it's natural. I think with the amount of frustration, you almost let the frustrations out in a wrong way, obviously, and you're like, "Oh, Dad, I'm sorry, yeah, sorry, I shouted like that." And I think it's just natural for what you've been through in that sense, and ladies and gents, it's just an amazing insight. I don't think, and I like to think that it's almost and you've said far more than I expected. So I'm really, really grateful about that, mate. And what my next point, I think, to finish off, because we've been going for over an hour and I absolutely love it. It's felt like 5 minutes. It's been amazing. For you, do you and this can link into obviously what I like to ask, well, what's next for you? And I say for you, and again, you don't have to answer in much detail if you don't want to, but it's a case of what is life like for you, and what will it be, obviously, with the bits that's gone on, obviously the two incidents that's happened, obviously maybe the first one not so much long term, but so much with the device that was put in.
Yeah, even so, to be fair, even the first instance, I was told I've got an increased chance of getting arthritis. It's fractional, but
Yeah,
it,
it's
it
the
makes
little things, I suppose. No, the
yeah,
little things which add up.
it makes a difference. But now, obviously, so I have a device just above my left pec, like you mentioned briefly earlier, and the way it's set up is this wire goes from the device through into a vein which goes all the way to my heart, it just sat there. It's like a defib, it just sits there and does idle. If my heart was ever to go into a funny rhythm, it would shock me. But my heart's as healthy as anyone's, probably healthier than most people's, but it doesn't. So it just sits there at the moment. But because of the way it's set up, in order to preserve that, I can't do lots of upper body movements. Like I can't have a chest day at the gym. I can't do a lot of things that I want to do. I can't row again because of the repetitive nature. So yeah, I now live my life doing upper body workouts. For me is purely on your it's just lifting on a sagittal plane, but it's like bicep curls, tricep pull down, stuff like that. Your legs, you're all fine. And my main sport is now tennis, because the only thing that uses overarm on my left side is the ball toss. My right side is completely free to move however I choose. That's all good. I can do upper body stuff with that. It's just my left side. But yeah, so I've got this in for life, and it's purely a safety precaution. So if it never went off, it'd probably be extremely frustrating for me. But it's one of those things where the risk of not having it in, because when you have a cardiac arrest, your chances of having another one are increased by 50%.
Yeah, your mum mentioned it, didn't she, in the podcast here? So it was almost 50, like, what was it, 25% more likely to have another one if you don't get the device put in, or...
Oh no, so it's 50 if you do or don't.
Okay.
It doesn't change no matter if you get a device or not. But if you have the device in, you're pretty much covered for it.
Yeah.
So you're unlike, whereas if you don't have it in and you do have another one, your chances of survival are very, very low. Like, so you're not supposed to survive an out of hospital cardiac arrest. So I did that anyway. I was, your 5% chance I survived. That's because of where I was. But if I do it again, because my heart's already been through it once, it's slightly decreased my chance of survival, which are already not great.
Yeah. And this is probably a pretty bizarre question to ask, and please do sort of interrupt me if it is, but did that subconsciously, and you're obviously in your own mind, you're obviously currently thinking, what can you do already? You obviously got a lot on your mind, thinking, all right, I need to do this, but obviously I need to keep thinking about it. Does it almost give you a bit of reassurance subconsciously, knowing that you can, to a certain extent, go back to what you love to do? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I was always going to be happy if I could go back to exercise, knowing that I had to change sport, because of the way I am, I took up two when I came to uni anyway. So if one was blocked out, I always had the other one. And because they're completely different, it was it was quite handy. Just because I've always been multi-sport athlete anyway. But this was okay. Here you go. You can now do this. So I was never subconscious. Subconscious for me was always thinking, was always trying to deal with the fact that I couldn't ever do some of those things again. They a psychologist that I spoke to, he said that it's usually about a 6 month turnaround between you actually accepting the fact that the device is in and you have to perform a certain way now. But I eventually, yes, I did come to terms with it, but those first 6 months were
Very
horrendous.
tough. Yeah, I was gonna say, well, that's an understatement. I've just giving you. It must have been. I couldn't even imagine it. And and you've answered my question. I was actually my next question was right. How sort of long did it take you? But what we'll do is I think this is really good because they'll link into the last little point that I've got. Obviously, again, this is another point, and I was going to message you about this anyway. I want to apologize. Obviously, if I make like I don't mean to want to compare obviously what anyone's been through compared to Will. This is I want to apologize as well if I did at all. But what is your advice for anyone? And again, I think everyone's different. Everyone can either brush it off and be like, oh, this is fine, I'll crack on, versus someone who probably takes it a little bit more personally. And I think the advice that you can give them, regardless the severity, will probably help them a lot. Because obviously you're towards, if not at the very top of what could happen. So what's your advice for overcoming this adversity then? Obviously it's different, varied based on some people's events. You again, not in a disrespectful way, you've had two cracks to come up with this advice. So what's your advice for people, mate?
I would say talk to people. Definitely some of the most common problems that we have now is communicating, even if it's something like mental health or even stuff like speaking out against abuse and stuff like that. Even with the events that I've been through, is I've learned that communication is your most important ally. Like if you don't say anything, people don't know. So how can you expect them? It's like when people blame you, or so some people have blamed me for not being there when they've been through stuff. One of them was while I was in hospital, and they said, well, you weren't there for me when this was happening. And I was just like, do you have any idea how fragile I was at that point in time? And I just said to them, look, if you'd have contacted me and told me, I would have known. But because you didn't, I didn't say anything.
How are you gonna know exactly?
I didn't tell a lot of people very close to me what had happened until I was ready, which was, so I gave myself a week, and then I rang my best friend straight away, and I was like, look, this has happened. And he then came up the week after. But it's, again, communication. If you don't tell people, they won't know. And if you don't communicate, either if it's in your physical behavior or how you are towards other people, I'd just say, just like, you don't know what everyone else has gone through. So it's like, even though I've been through something quite rough, I would never look at someone else and go, yeah, you're nothing compared to me, because it's like, you don't know what they're dealing with. It's not everything is physical. Like, just because I ended up in hospital from what I dealt with, it was, for me, I'm a lot less emotionally scarred than someone perhaps that had abuse growing up or had issues with parents and stuff like that. So I've got physical marks on me and a couple of mental ones, but they're only due to those two incidents that have made me grow up and realize, the world is what it is. Take it as it comes and don't judge people. Let them get to know them before it's like people say, first 10 seconds of knowing someone, that's when you judge them. For now, it's like, you see him, talk to him. understand them a bit more, then you can make a judgment if you have to. Otherwise, it's like, oh, they're a person, they're okay. But I'll never like discriminate someone just because I've known them 2 seconds, and within that 2 seconds they told me to off. So yeah, it could. I've just caught them on a bad day.
Yeah, and to be brutally honest with you, I probably didn't think about that. Not obviously mental health obviously is a huge thing. I always think about it a lot of time, but I like what you said there, sort of comparing that sort of I love that you said obviously the severity is not almost what you think about. It's almost the fact that it might not be sort of physical and you might not see it, which is incredible. And like I said, almost similar to, I've had a lot of sort of young individuals on the podcast, and it's very rare to see someone sort of speak like yourself at such a young age, which is amazing, mate. And just again, thank you so much for sharing it to us all. Obviously, it's probably a bit weird, everyone at the moment. Like I just can imagine yourself receiving this text message, being like, all right, yeah, he wants to call weirdo. I was like, and then saying, yeah, of course I'll do it. And then I was like, what? And one of my mates messaged me being like, oh, do you want to come on this podcast for my sports journalism? They're like, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, wait, they must be responding the same way when I ask someone like you. So I really appreciate it, mate. Honestly, really, really do.
It's fine. Happy to share my story, especially if it benefits others. It's great. That's probably the one reason that I did the documentary that I did. And I was so thankful that it went as crazy as it did. My phone didn't stop buzzing for a month at least after it was released. I had hundreds of people watching it on live stream as it went out. It was released to the world. It was awesome, but it was more like, now people understand why I am the way I am. Not, look, I'm on TV.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't care. It's like people now. I want people to behave. I don't want people to behave a certain way around me just because they think, oh, he's had this done to him, so he might be a bit touchy around it. I'm like, I'm an open book, and I'll tell you how it is. I've got no time for bullshit, and it's like, take it as you see it.
That's brilliant. And literally, you said that on the, you literally said it on the message. I was like, obviously, I always ask everyone, right, is there any bits that you don't, me to mention? Obviously, respect. Obviously, you need to respect. Obviously, you might not want to say something. It's like, nah, mate, just say anything. And I was like, that's amazing. I was like, that's the best message to ever hear. So, which is incredible, mate. So again, I really want to thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully, I know I've learned a lot before even this podcast. Thankfully, known Will for a long time, so hopefully, you all have learned as well. And again, mate, thank you very much for coming on. I'll leave obviously all the links to Will's Instagram in the description as well. Oh, all the Instagram, all his social media in the description below, as well as the documentary. I'm going to put the documentary at the first link as well, which is, you need to watch it. It's brilliant. There's no words. So thank you very much, mate. Again.
No worries at all. No worries at all. Happy to be.
No worries at all, mate. Thanks for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to that episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast. Honestly, again, one of my favorites. I say that every podcast because it honestly does live up to the hype every single time. Like I said to Will there, almost 5 minutes. It almost felt like I looked at the time and an hour and a bit had passed. So it just shows to what sort of a bloke Will is, and the points that I write down on the sort of show notes are, I'm not so I need to hit this. They're just there to bring it about. Obviously, those two events for Will are they're not what shaped him. He's already a good bloke, and obviously, if you're watching this, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ear. It's they're just what made you into even better person, and to make you even stronger than you already were, and more determined. So mate, thank you so much for coming in. If you're watching this, and hopefully you are. As to anyone else who's watched this episode, and obviously it's a longer one, I appreciate that it's probably taking you a bit longer to listen to it, unless you're in a really long car journey, and I like to do that. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to another episode. Hopefully we can have as many guests on like that as possible. Like I said, a lot of you probably don't know who Will is. You will now, obviously, but obviously, like I said, I've said obviously about 20 times, but it's what makes the Fitzness Academy podcast so amazing to film each and every time is the fact that the people who I have on have amazing stories, not just big followings. So for me, that's what I want to live this podcast by. It may take longer to grow because obviously the people don't have that following, but I don't care. It's what I want to do with this podcast. So, and I will continue to do this. So thank you so much for listening once again. Stay tuned for another episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast next Sunday, 6 p.m. every single week. Thanks, guys, and take care.